signs maybe in front of a number. Well, now we're grouping in those terms multiple numbers as well. So we're going to need to look at, and again, the plus or minus signs break these terms up. So I'm going to be looking at this term. That's one of the terms. Then this term and this term. Those are each individual terms because they are split up by a plus or minus sign. And that sign is in front. Now we could have multiple plus or minus signs, but wherever that plus or minus sign is that follows the number is where your new term starts. So we need to get simplified down each of those individual terms. 2 times negative 4. Class?
2 times negative 4 is
Negative 8.
Negative 8. Learned that one yesterday. So that's negative 8. There isn't anything I can simplify here. Negative 3 is negative 3.
And then wouldn't you times it?
So make that negative 3. No, I didn't put this in parentheses. These, I'm just using that to identify where those terms are. Now I won't do that again, but I want you to understand how and where things are broken up at. So it's just minus 3, which will end up being a plus negative.
So it'd be.
Let's wait on that. And then we look at this one, the green term. How many negative signs are there in that term?
That's a good thing because the bad guy's leaving town. So it'd be. So there's top 18. 3 negatives.
Inside the green, there's a total of 3. I'm just counting up how many total there are. So that would be a negative value. And then 6 times 3 is 18. Then we change our subtraction to addition and to a negative.
Wait, wouldn't that be like, no, never mind.
If you did what Fisher was saying, Isaiah was saying, would be this. He, I think, and if not, that's okay because this needs to be explained anyway. If we didn't think of this subtraction sign out there as being a part of that term and we just brought it down, then you have a bad guy leaving town, and that does give you a positive 18. And so you still end up with minus 18, and you can still make that plus negative 18. So we're adding 3 numbers whose signs are the same.
So you could still do that, but you just have to add that negative.
So get this 20. So
129
is it negative what?
Negative 29.
Yes.
And I just, because each one of them has a negative value, I just added the numbers. Alright. I told you when we first started plugging in values for variables in the evaluation problems that I wanted you to put parentheses around those values. And that when we got to the negative numbers and inserting them, it would make a whole lot more sense why. And so we're there. So let's look and see what happens. We have negative and plugging in. Let's look at it without plugging in parentheses. So we have negative, negative 2, minus negative 2, and then minus 4. Or negative 4. What is wrong with the way that I wrote the problem compared to what is supposed to be taking place? Pass.
Parentheses.
Parentheses, but what is implied by those parentheses?
Multiply.
It's implied multiplication.
He's got like a black mark on his face. Do you see it?
No.
Look.
No care. Right here. This is an implied multiplication. If you don't insert parentheses, what does it look like is taking place?
Negative. Or
Subtraction. If you don't put in the parentheses, when you're plugging these values in, you're changing what the expression is saying. That right here, even though I told you at the very beginning, this is the sole reason for why I expected you to insert using parentheses is because we would get to a point where we have negative numbers and we need to be in the practice of plugging in with parentheses. If you haven't, you may have been able to get away with some stuff, but it's going to catch up with you now if you're not used to doing it. So if we look at our individual terms, I have this term,
Positive 2.
which is positive 2, so 2. And then I have this term, which has 1, 2, 3 negative signs.
Positive 8.
Or you can bring the minus sign down and then look at the negative 2 and the negative 4, and that makes 8. Either way, you get a minus 8. Okay. And then we go plus negative, makes that negative 6. I didn't notice that, I'm sorry.
He laid his face down on that pencil thing and it like
Smudged it a little bit.
Is it gone?
it's gone.
Okay, another one with the value being plugged in, negative, and then we're plugging in 2 for A. Plugging in negative 3 for X, 2 for A. So when we use that as parentheses, when we plug in, we can see that implied multiplication. It's just a lot more clear. I have negative 2, and then I can do one of two things. I can either bring the minus sign down individually, or I can look at this whole part. How many negative signs are there?
2.
Two negatives in that term, just from here over. 2 negative signs, which is a positive. 3 times 2 is, so it's a positive 6 or a plus 6.
Wait, hang on. Could you just like minus,
Mm-hmm.
like, or subtract a negative 6 then? Because if you were to take 3 times 2, it'd be 6. And since there's a positive and a negative, wouldn't that be negative 6?
Right, okay, I see what you're saying. That was taking me a second. So if you didn't do it the way that I would do it, but you did it this other way, then it's a good question. If you brought this negative sign down and then looked at just this part here, that's a negative 3 times a negative 2, which is a negative 6. And we can put that in parentheses. Plus, the negative would become plus, because you have 2 negatives,
So then positive 6.
makes it a positive 4. One through 13 odds, 14. 17.
Dude, 29 odds. Just joking.
So 3. What is 1 through 13? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 22 problems. I'm gonna back this up. Hit the eraser button.
Woohoo!